The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Kraynak.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it. Weekend editions here at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Mark Kraynak, Elijah Herbal, all in this morning. Frigid Saturday, but a bit of a thaw in comparison to the week. And we welcome you in. Busy show. We'll rewind with Coach Rick Kaczenski, talking truth or rumor when it comes to playing in that frozen tundra moment out on the gridiron. A lot of recruiting thoughts today, and we'll mix in some volleyball and some hoops as we grind through February. Numbers to get in, 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, at Mark Skurs, and at Herbal Essence for Elijah. So hour two, we'll run down Brandon Vogel, and we'll say hi to the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp. In tribute to the Nebraska football social media department, Kraynak, did you fire up any midnight dodgeball last night?
I did not even see that latest video that they put out. Dodgeball, huh?
Like at all?
Let me hold on. Let me just think. Let me go back through here.
You're all right.
No. I did see it. I did the one in the turf in the
indoor facility. Yes.
Yeah.
Where poor Mario Verduzco looked and felt like every awkward eighth grader. Right?
That wasn't a big surprise.
No.
Yeah, like if you're just sitting there thinking like, all right,
who's going to get picked on?
The dodgeball team. Verduzco is not the one that jumps to the top of the list.
Oh, he's a wanted man. Is what jumped. He was top 5 on who's going to be targeted for me, just because he's just a good little dude, and he's got his jacket and his backpack on, and he's trying to wind up and throw. And the next thing you know, there's 3 speeding spears coming at him. So it was pretty funny.
And how about the fact that they went old school too with those like red rubbery like Voigt balls?
Yeah, like the one they've outlawed now. Somehow there's a stash of them down at the Hawk Center.
Those have been outlawed for like a decade. So you know that all those kids, like none of them have actually ever played with them.
They've just heard about them.
They're like, oh my God. That's brutal. I could have destroyed some kids back in the day.
Even back in junior high before, when you and I were doing the junior high thing, and I mean, those were great. We could even palm them then. You despite whether you had the NFL prototype hand size in junior high or not, you could still palm those bastards and get a good wind-up, like full body, crow hop center field, forget the cutoff guy. Let's just airmail one to home.
I actually played on a dodgeball team about, was it 10, 15 years ago? Like I
thought you might.
An adult rec dodgeball team, Sundays. It was co-ed. It was brilliant. I'll tell you what, because here's the thing about it that was so cool that everybody realized. Like
spandex?
As soon as you hit the court, everybody on the court is cheesing out, smiling. Like everybody. And you're just like, why is everybody so damn happy? And then you just kind of realize, you're like, well, the reason why is because they just, at some point in life, you were just told not to play dodgeball anymore. Or the gym teacher just stopped rolling out and so you just quit. But it doesn't mean you didn't like it. Like, I can't remember ever going through a time in life where I was like, I hope I don't have to play dodgeball again. It just left your life sort of quietly without you even knowing it. And so then to fast forward, however many years later, and to actually play it, everybody's like, this is great. And you're throwing at people's faces. It was amazing.
And then you'd go out for beer and wings after.
That part made it good too.
Yeah, I mean, it was great.
There's some people that are like the Matrix, though. Oh my God.
I know. And
some of these people.
Yeah, those guys are on the Ocho now.
Right, and that's what's. There's a few guys that were on Nebraska's squad that were going neo. We're able to how low can you go, bending your body, dodging that speeding ball. But yeah, so pretty good feel good moment for the Nebraska football, and it was cool because. We were talking to Gary Barnett this week about, what are some team building activities that you do to kind of break up the grind of winter conditioning.
Throw freshmen in lockers.
Right. So there's some of that good-natured hazing, I'm sure. But the other
Swirlies.
Right. The other side of it is Northwestern had Viking night, where they'd do a liftoff, where at midnight they would just have a weightlifting contest, and they'd break it down, I think, by position group to see who can just throw up the most weight, and then they brought in this 15-foot grill. So all sorts of carnivore activity.
Things.
Yes,
explains things.
They'd be doing steaks and turkey legs, and they would go medieval, where you get done squatting $1,000 probably.
Husker players over here doing yoga.
Well, yoga's underrated, quite frankly.
No, I know it.
but yeah, back in the day,
crafted a football team
at Northwestern. Yeah, at Northwestern, they're doing Viking night, where they start at midnight. They're throwing up weight, and then. Go grab yourself 2 T-bones on breaks between sessions. So
Nebraska's doing vinyasas. That explains things. That explains overtime. A couple years ago.
So you're chalking it up to just what type of mood's associated with
It's not upward dog and downward. It's not Zen. It's Vikings.
Someday we'll get to that football Zen. Kraynak, big day today with. Some in-state announcements. And, we've both been fortunate enough to spend time around Steve Warren, and we've seen and covered him not only at Nebraska and watched him in the NFL, but we saw what he's done for the state and then the community in Omaha with Dream Foundation and the mentoring and the after-school programs and helping families in need. And then that's also the after school side of training, a facility now, and then just great coaching and mentorship on the field with kids improving their agility, their speed, their strength, and really the who's who from around the state, the region. And this is not a paid endorsement for Steve-O. It's just what happens. You look at kids that are going D1 or getting great looks, they find a way to get to the Warren Academy.
Yeah,
and
Thomas Fidoni's one of them.
Right. Fidoni, and even kids that have ended up going elsewhere, Iowa or Notre Dame in state or Oregon, have spent time there. But you've got in-state talent that's really getting crafted and developed on their own with this training regiment they're on, and. They are bigger, stronger, faster, and Nebraska is no longer a secret. Nebraska is no longer flyover. Nebraska is an open border for programs around the country to check out. Huddle helps with that as well. But today you're going to see an announcement here of a top 5 as we shift towards 2022 recruiting. And you've got Omaha Central lineman Deshaun Woods, and you have Burke linebacker Devon Jackson. And then you've got some Bellevue West studs, of course, with Micah Riley Ducker and Kadeem Helms. And then Ernest Hausman from Columbus. I watched Columbus play this year, and Hausman was so much fun to see get after the quarterback. Such an athletic guy. But, it's a different contrast with what the prospects are for Nebraska to land these 2022 kids and also the 2023 crew. It's just different. There's just not a lot of I won't say Nebraska love, but these kids aren't really drawn towards Nebraska, similar to when Nebraska got here with the Hickman and Henrich situation out of Burke. Nebraska, day one, came in, made them a priority, got them to Lincoln, and we feel pretty good about Henrich, and we'll see what Hickman can do as he goes back to tight end. But you know what? Going to be a battle, and I don't know that Nebraska's going to have a winning battle with this Nebraska 5 group for 2022. Maybe one, maybe two kids end up in Lincoln. A long time between now and December, but a lot of the recruiting experts don't expect to see Woods or Jackson have Nebraska in their top 5 today.
Yeah, it's a bit of a perfect storm. It is somewhat concerning, but I think it's more of a result of how the last 10-ish years have gone. I think
you're right on.
Right? Look, and Coach Frost and the current program hasn't done anything to turn it around in terms of just wins. I mean, just haven't, right? So if you're one of those top shelf kids and, you know, you're seeing what's going on in Lincoln, you're reading all the vitriol, you're hearing about all the frustration.
Well, what are you seeing on Saturday?
You don't have a connection here outside of just living here now, because it sounds like both kids have, you know, family or, you know, time spent away from Nebraska where they just don't have that allegiance. And then the team isn't winning enough and hasn't won enough since in their formative years to even to change that. That's kind of where you're at. That's where, you know, couple that with the pandemic where Barrett Ruud can't go on site, can't hang out at the high schools, can't develop that relationship. You can't have kids on campus.
Difficult.
I mean, it's kind of a perfect storm. But look, to act like it's not a loss or to act like, oh, well, whatever, they're just not a good fit. And no. Now, Avante Dickerson, to me, that was a little bit of a different story because honestly, if you watched him play, I didn't see how he fit in a Travis Fisher secondary. I just didn't. Like, you know, he's just not a physical player. And it's not a knock. It's just, you know, if you just watch him play, he's not a super physical guy. And that doesn't really jive with Travis. So that one, him going to Oregon, I think he fits them perfectly. Like that's a good fit for him. These other ones, you could use Jackson, you could use Woods, you could use those guys. It's a loss, but I also don't know if it's red alert status. It's just time to frickin' win. You know, you start doing that a little bit more, we're probably not having this conversation. If there's no pandemic, they'd probably make the top 5.
Well,
just by force of personality and developing a relationship. It's been hard for them to do you know, to forge any kind of connection with them.
Let's flip it around a little bit too. And from a pandemic standpoint, Nebraska did an amazing job. And I'll say that the kids in the 2021 class did this, where the Prohaskas and Harburgs really went out of their way, this group and this large group of early enrollees, made it a point to kind of be in Fidoni's hip pocket, right? Yep. When you look at the schools recruiting Fidoni, and you've got Iowa there with their history of tight end development for the NFL, or Notre Dame and LSU. I mean, Fidoni couldn't physically go visit because of the pandemic. And when it comes to vicinity and closeness to home, you know, there's Council Bluffs, there's Omaha, then there's Lincoln, and then there's this group of dudes that just wouldn't let him get away within his own class. And that's one instance with some of the local kids. Who knows how 2021 goes if some of these other kids can go visit. We know about Dickerson on his own dime going out to Oregon, right? There's enough film out there to get a number of D1 offers for a Harburg kid out of Kearney. But when push came to shove, it can work both ways, right? Where with this pandemic. You're kind of locked in and you can't travel for the official visit, which can maybe help sway staying closer to home, because you just got to accept, all right, here's our virtual tour. Great. All right, sweet. Or you find a way on your own dime, and that's not easy for a lot of families. And I mean, this thing got pushed back again, the recruiting dead period, to May 31st. So I think it's double-edged sword here. And what you touched on about not being able to kind of be in Omaha as much as you can be with a lot of these kids for the 2022 class is not ideal for Nebraska. But Nebraska can make their own argument with some development, some wins on Saturday, and proof in the win-loss column that things are getting turned around, and they can leave an impression before this next early signing day that's 11 months away.
Yeah, and it's not for lack of trying. I think there's a couple players over the year. Harrison Phillips is one of them, defensive lineman for the Bills that went to Stanford. Nebraska screwed themselves there because they didn't recruit him properly. They didn't treat him with respect. The offer came in way too late. That was just after the Sioux years, and so I think the thought with the staff at the time is he didn't have the, certain physical traits that they were looking for, their prototype, and so they punted on him and they lost him. And look, he's in the NFL still. He's like, that was a huge miss because you didn't really try hard enough there. Noah Fant, that recruitment got off to not a very good start by a defensive line coach, if I'm not mistaken, that was here for a year and gone under Riley. That kind of messed up that relationship. So there's at least none of that going on, right? It's not for lack of trying, but kids have their own set of reasons why they do or don't want to do things. And anymore, it just has. I think you touched on it. The fact that Nebraska is more open than it ever was before, whether that be because of technology, ease of travel, social media, whatever. That wasn't always the case. Nebraska enjoyed relative anonymity with their players before. There weren't a ton of other schools that came in and tried to recruit here. But it's easier to do now. It's easier to recruit wherever the players are. Other programs can easily go in and recruit. And Nebraska benefits from that. Look, Nebraska has been poaching a lot of good players out of Iowa. They've been poaching a lot of good players out of Kansas. So Nebraska does it too. And I don't know. I just don't see it as a huge indictment on the current operation as much as I do see it as an indictment on how the last 15, 20 years have gone.
It's right? It's been a gradual decline and I guess you haven't given a compelling enough reason. There's not a compelling enough reason outside of big crowd sizes. Kids
proximity
just don't,
to home. What are you selling?
Kids just don't grow up. I never thought I'd say this, but it's been evident in my own house. Kids will. I look at my kid and his buddies. They love football. They play football in somebody's front yard as often as they can. They love doing it. And they kind of pay attention to Nebraska. There's pictures of them when they're 4, 5, 6 years old at tailgates, during the Kenny Bell years. And again, that's now 7 years removed. And there's just not you and I, bro, we bounced out of the rack every morning growing up just with our families putting a red sweatshirt on. And it's just not that way. I mean, the attachment, I think, once they start winning, can absolutely grow to a full bandwagon of the next class of young Husker fans / potential players, right? But it's not the same attachment now because of the win-loss situation. And kids you have social media, you have the internet, you have the ability to check out things so many different spots. I mean, there's just it's okay, but there's just more of a worldly view, I think, with a lot of young kids, that's cool, Hey,
and I don't know if you experienced the last week or so here.
Uh-huh.
It can kind of suck in Nebraska sometimes. If you have the chance to bounce out of here.
You mean when you're telling me it's warmer in Nome, Alaska than it is in Lincoln? Yeah, no, I hear you. I think of some in-state kids though. And the one guy, and I know Coach Frost was like, when we talk early 90s, in-state, can't miss, got to get him. And, Stanford, with a little help from Joe Montana and Bill Walsh, win that initial recruiting battle. But a guy that I heard a ton about that I was wondering, okay, this guy's like going to be as good as advertised. Amon Green, Omaha Central.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, they can't not get this Green dude. I mean, we were both in high school at the time, but we saw him run on a Friday night. I mean, he was incredible. And you look at the championship teams Nebraska had, right? I mean, they had a ton of Nebraska help starting on those championship teams, either on the defensive side of the ball, like a Terry Keneally or and Eric Stokes, okay, or you go later back, John Hess or Eric Anderson, just Dishman. I mean, just go through the list.
Damon, Clinton.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Damon Benning, Clinton Childs,
Tony Veland.
We're pretty big.
Johnson.
I mean, yeah, and then Phil Ellis at linebacker. I mean, so. That Nebraska impact was very real. Yeah, the pride of East. Rob Zadiska, Dr. Rob, right there, was key.
Davison, Reggie Ball, there was a lot.
I mean, those are names that made plays, and then your cherry on top's Amon running the football, and with Schlesinger or Makovica leading the way.
Yeah, and there is a bit of a resurgence going on that's worth noting. Just in terms of sort of sheer Division I talent.
Yes, it's like 30. It's like 30 years ago,
and I think it does have a lot to do with, like you mentioned, the Warren Academy. There's explosive edge. The training in general has gotten really good. It's gotten really, really good, and most of the key players are participating in that. They're shaving off tenths of seconds off their 40s. They're gaining 20 to 30 pounds of muscle mass. Like, they're training at a very high level. Whereas before, I think it was more just, there's a lot of 3-4 sport athletes, but you got guys specializing in this stuff now, taking it seriously, getting on the camp circuit, getting noticed. They're more accessible than ever before. And then you're just seeing a large pool of talent come back. And there were some slim years for a while where there'd be maybe 2 or 3 Division I capable players out of the state of Nebraska. Now you're a good solid 8 to 10 annually now, if not more.
Well,
and for whatever reason, tight ends are just sprouting up like crazy in the state of Nebraska. Well, it kind of started with Fant, but now you got Helms and Ducker out of Bellevue West right now. 2 Division I tight ends on 1 high school team. You got the kid out of Pierce, class of 2023, just finished his sophomore year. He landed an offer, I believe, yesterday,
right,
from Nebraska. He's already offered by Iowa State, right? So, and you just had Carney, you just had Fedoni,
Rollins.
Even though Rollins, who nobody even talks. Oh yeah, the other tight. I mean, we just named 7 Division I caliber tight ends.
Yeah, and
all within, and you don't. Fedoni's not in state, but might as well be. He's Council Bluffs, right? That's pretty incredible too.
Mark Kraynak, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal, Weekend Edition. We'll see how the in-state progress continues with that Nebraska attachment. And got a top 5 announcement today. Deshaun Woods and Devin Jackson, Burke, and Central products that, bless their heart, didn't even get a play. Didn't even get a play last fall.
Nebraska not expected to be in the top 5 for either of them.
We'll rewind here with Coach Kaczenski next on Hail Varsity Weekend.
to rise with Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Here's Chris Schmidt and Mark Kraynak.
Back to you, it's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Let's get caught up with Rick Kaczenski, coach at Nebraska and Iowa. Kaz, true or false, snow and sub-zero temperatures, perfect for football, myth or reality?
That's a myth, bro. I don't care how tough you are. right. Fatigue and cold makes cowards out of all of us. So that's a myth. I think, Schmitty, that Nebraska Iowa game in 2012, I think that's the coldest I've ever been in my life. I remember walking out in pregame, and I went over and I was talking to JP, and I'm like, somebody's gonna die. I'm like, we shouldn't even play this game today. It was, I don't know what, I don't think the temperature was like below zero. I don't know. It was probably the wind. That was the coldest football game that I had ever been a part of in my life. It was awful. I mean, credit to both teams. I mean, that was a hard-fought game. It was an ugly game, but good Lord, man, you had to be a tough dude to bash your head to another human being on that day.
That's my thing. I didn't go to that. I've been to Iowa City, but I have not gone to a Nebraska Iowa game in Iowa City. I will do that once this stupid pandemic goes. I plan to do. My buddy's from near Iowa City that I golf with, Iowa Russ, so he's a big Hawkeye guy, and we're going to go drink a lot of beer on a Friday and then go to the game Saturday. But long and short of it is, my dad and my brother, because my brother was living in Ankeny, and they went. And my dad, bless his heart, I mean, he lived through the 70s of the Oklahoma-Nebraska game, the day after Thanksgiving or around late November, where everybody froze their ass off, and it was Jack Daniels and hope that got you through. And but he's like, no, never again am I going to a football. What is it about Iowa, Ames and Iowa City? Nebraska fans still can't warm up from those two venues.
Gosh, I can't figure it out. I mean, honestly, that game. Yeah, both games, even the game in 14, it was brutally cold, man. But I don't know if it's just that wind, but I don't remember Kinnick Stadium when I was coaching there being a real windy stadium.
Right.
It's just I guess it's just the luck of the luck of the draw. But I tell you that game with that series with Bo and our staff, that was an entertaining hard fought series there, man.
Those were such
always something
tough ball games,
always
man.
something unique. Yeah, always something unique to those games. With the exception of 2013, which was probably the most unique. All the stuff that was going on, behind the scenes with administration and things like that. But we need about an hour podcast to talk about that one.
Well,
we can go back. We can go back to the to being on the plane.
Well, go back there. Talk to me about the plane.
Oh, let me tell you. Let me just say there were some people wearing Husker colors that didn't seem real happy that we had beat Penn State in overtime. So let's just say that. We'll save the rest of it. We'll charge people to listen to the rest of that story.
Well, that was a freaking blizzard you guys were in, and I got an account from the sideline from somebody we both know, and it was a situation where Bo was ticked off about special teams. He was letting Garrison have it. And then, was it Maher who drilled the winner? I forget who made the field goal.
No, it wasn't Maher.
Smith, right?
Oh, gosh.
Was it Smith?
No. Yes, Patrick.
Yes,
Patrick,
yes.
Yeah, he nailed it. He nailed it twice.
I know, because there was a false start. That's what set Bo off. Somebody had a false start. They had to kick it again. You guys had to kick it again. And as soon as it splits the uprights, Bo's wanting to hug and Mr. Garrison is
I turned to JP. Me and JP were standing next to each other. And literally the ball was going through the uprights, and I turned to him. I said, "Let's get the hell out of here." Literally walked off the field. That was the conversation. And then we got in the coaches locker room. We were freezing our asses off, and then just a bunch of pissed off, angry guys. And then you get around your players, and like I said, even though Penn State was a little bit down that year. Right after the Sandusky stuff. I mean, it's still Penn State. They still had good players, and you're playing in Beaver Stadium. And we found a little joy there in Mudville after that win. And we get on the plane, and some folks walked past us, and honestly, they were grimacing. And I remember Bo turning and looking. It was Bo and JP, and then it was me and Terry Joseph always sat next to each other, and we always had cranberry juice too, just cranberry juice. So
yeah, right,
just cranberry. Yeah. So me and T-Joe, we sat next together. We sat next to each other in the third row there, and Bo turned around and he just said, "Did you see that?" And we just all shook our heads, man. And that's kind of parlayed into the week ahead of us. So yeah, man, that was I know we're jumping around a little bit, but yeah, that was a tough Iowa week. It was hard just kind of keeping the team together going into that Iowa game, and God bless Ron Kellogg. You're down to your third quarterback, and we're battling our tails off, man, and we're beat up. And I mean, you talk about a skeleton crew. I mean, I think I went to that Iowa game in 2013 with 5 D linemen that could actually play in the game. It was a wild deal, brother.
Well, and the guys you did have were pretty young. I mean, you had some really talented dudes, but they hadn't seen a lot of starter rep snaps, or at least, because I remember Vincent having a big game, but Vincent was really young and played really well. But yeah, that's just it, man. Going from the Big 12, covering this team, to the Big 10, and the Big 12 was awesome. It was fun, and then you get to the Big 10, and it's not just that everyone in a headset is pretty money. It's the other side of it being, it's just a death march, because you just rock Penn State in overtime. Here's Iowa, here's Iowa coming to town, and it's as cold or worse. And by the time it's November, everyone's just beat to hell. I mean, it's just stacked on top of one another, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I've been on both sides of it. On the Iowa side and the Nebraska side. And let me tell you, I mean, you are crawling to that game, crawling. And I in 2011 when we played in Lincoln at Iowa. Same thing. I brought 2 kids, Darian Cooper. I can't remember. Brought another D lineman, 2 redshirt guys, because that's all we had. We were almost going to play two guys that we had redshirted the entire season. Riley McMahon and Darian Cooper, we brought them on the trip to Nebraska because we weren't sure if we had enough D linemen. And then, right before the game, we had a conversation saying obviously that's not fair to them, and we'll move this backer here, we go to this package. But Rex had a career day. They got us. We played pretty well. Our offense couldn't generate a whole lot, and then Rex they went unbalanced in the second half, and they were just running ISO to the unbalanced side, and we didn't have an answer. We didn't have an answer for Rex, but both teams, man. I mean, we were just beat up. There's a ton of respect. I mean, at that point, I'm sure there is. I'm sure Nebraska's getting some of that now, but those games were bloodbaths, man. I mean, we were crawling, and then even 2012, we're playing them, lose Baker on the first series. And I think we lost. Didn't we lose the center too? So
was that Jackson?
I think so. Yeah. We go to Iowa City in 2012. We clinched the division. We got to play Iowa. They're struggling. We got out of there. I think it was a 13-7 win, and we had to play lights out. We had to play lights out in the second half to regain control of that game, man. So, yeah, just wild times, man. Wild times.
A few minutes, Rick Kaczenski is with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Kaz, you mentioned the Iowa-Nebraska showdown, and is there a game that you either were part of at Iowa, Nebraska, or let's go back to Notre Dame that's just kind of burned into memory? You've laid out some, but like a post-game kind of a, wow, I'm really enjoying this win?
You I guess when you look at the ones you enjoy, you kind of bundle them all together. There's a few that stick out. I'll get to that, but as a coach and a player, you reflect on the ones got away. I mean, the '95 Orange Bowl, played Florida State at Notre Dame, and gosh, I mean, we were in control of that game. We're up 26-14 with about 7 minutes to go. End up losing. We had a punt return called back. Excuse me, and defense just couldn't get them. Florida State realized that they were Florida State, and I think we played a lot of man, and they just went up and down the field on the last two drives and ended up beating us. That's just one, man, you just wish you had back. And then Southern Cal, 96, we had beaten them, I think, 10 years in a row at that point. And, we're going in to score. Had a guy, I'll say his name, he dropped the ball and fumbled. Malcolm Johnson would have put us up by 15 with 2 minutes to go. And, they go down, score, and go for two, tie it. We go to overtime. They beat us in overtime. So, that's just, stuff like that is what sticks with you. But, of course, man, the locker room, Norm Parker, he used to say it all the time, man. He's like, you do it he said, we played Penn State in 2009 at Penn State, and it was supposed to be their revenge game from 2008 when we beat them on a last-second field goal. And he talked to us all week, to the defensive staff. He said, hey, guys, just look at your kids' faces when we beat Penn State's ass. And Penn State had a really good team. We go in there, it's a whiteout. They score on the first play of the game, 80-yard touchdown. I want to flip sidelines. I'm like, I'm kind of pulling for Penn State. Penn, I'm like, this is cool, whiteout. I'm like, holy cow, I want to coach here. And then next thing you know, we just kind of, he's throwing punches back and forth. Claiborne blocks that punt. And, we end up winning. And I remember going in that locker room and just remember Norm saying, he's like, look at their faces, Ricky. And I was like, it's amazing, man, because it did. We just that Penn State game, the Orange Bowl locker room that year. And, there's so many. Same thing at Nebraska, that Northwestern locker room, the Iowa locker room after we beat them in 12 to clinch the division. So, there's just a lot of memories. I think Michigan was special, too, in 2013. That was a hard-fought game. That was a cold game. And once again, I know people say Michigan's down. Michigan always has good players, and Michigan's always hard to beat. And, Amir scored on an option play there. And it was just great. You're going up that tunnel that Bo Schembechler walked up. Gosh, man, there's just so much history, and you're beating Michigan in the big house, and you're walking up with the Michigan players. And, it's just a cool deal. And I think I have a video of Bo after that game, talking to the team. And so, yeah, there's a lot of memories like that, man, but yeah, I think more as coaches and players, you're always kind of reflecting more on the ones that got away a little bit more than the ones that you won. But there's some special memories. I remember beating Texas's ass down there. You guys know how that beat them on a last-second field goal in '96 down there. I think the heat index was about 123 on the field, and we beat them on a last-second field goal. And I had some choice words for a few of the Longhorn fans going into that locker. You remember that old locker room? You went underneath the stadium there, Schmitty? Remember that one?
I know that they would come out from, I don't know if it was south or north, and Bevo's tranked out of his mind off to the left, and that's it. I was down in Austin, in '99, where Nebraska national title type team, right? That went 12-1. So I went down there with my college buddies, and my cousin was going to Texas. It's crazy. In the Schmidt household, right? You've got one cousin that went to Colorado, one that went to Texas. That they grew up in Houston. That's Cousin Dino's kids, and shout out to Cousin Dino. He's love him dearly. and we're down there, and my cousin, he lived in this setup, right? He lived next to one of the Bush twins. So we're playing beer pong till all hours with one of the Bush twins, and it was great. And then like everyone's partying, McConaughey's on the sideline. Nebraska got even in the Big 12 title game, but that loss at the end was just, we had great seats. We had incredible seats, but you were just like, son of a gun. Now, the best part of that whole weekend was sitting down having a beer with Earl Campbell at his barbecue joint on 6th Street.
He's the best. I mean, he's the best. I mean,
he's awesome.
He's the absolute best, man. Absolute best.
But I never got the locker room treatment. Kaz, we'll get you out of here on this. This is fun to chat some ball with you. Coach Holtz, and I've had him on the show a few times, and he's so awesome to hear his storytelling ability, but he is so wise, and he had to be a guy that the guys, I mean, not to go cliche here on you, but would run through the wall for, because he was such a motivator. Is that fair to say about him?
Yeah, absolutely. And you had to earn your stripes with Coach Holtz, but you also knew that there was a path to that. You saw what the benefits were if you earned those stripes. So you came to work it's like your dad. It's like that male mentor and role model. You're always trying to you want that acceptance. You want that approval. And once you got it, it was so powerful. And, there was never a game at Notre Dame that I was involved in as a player where I thought, man, we don't have a chance. I mean, no matter what, I was like, we're in this game, man. You look to the sidelines and you're like, okay, Coach Holtz is he's gonna figure this out for us, right? And that's how we all felt, or at least that's how I guess I can just speak. I can speak for me. That's how. Hey, we'll see you later. Sorry, I'm still at work here, but that's how we all felt, and at least the guys that I was around and respected Coach, and he knew the buttons to push. I'm sure, and I had the privilege of working for him also, and I saw how he changed. And I think that's what was great about him. He knew that he couldn't be the same coach at Notre Dame or couldn't be the same coach at South Carolina that he was at Notre Dame. And, there's just, and I think that tells you about the guy. He reads people, he reads players, knows how to motivate them. He knows their background, right? He knows about their parents. He knows where they come from. He knows what they're susceptible to. And, it's real easy to buy into him because, you believe everything he says. You believe this guy, if I listen to him, he can make me great.
Kaz, thanks for jumping on, brother.
The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday Morning Show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Kraynak.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Back with you, Tower 2 Weekend Edition, Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Good stuff from Coach Rick Kaczenski. Love our weekly chats with him. Mark Kraynak, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Hurrdat. We welcome in Brandon Vogel, managing editor from HailVarsity.com and magazine. You find him on Twitter at Brandon L. Vogel and get his book, Dream Like a Champion with John Cook. Vogues, before we get into the most thrilling moment with college football described in 2 words. It's a fun little Twitter game that was played kind of on the opposite spectrum of things that was floating around social media here. And Solid Verbal put this out. And without naming your team, describe your lowest moment as a college football fan in 2 words. Well, I want the highest moment, so be thinking about that. Kraynak, you too, and I'll have
Billy
one.
C.
Huh?
Billy C.
Is that your lowest moment?
Highest. That was great.
Okay.
Yeah. It was great. Loved it.
I love the inflection in that. I want to get your take on volleyball last night, Vogues, before we dive into some football stuff. And man,
the strain.
Okay, the strain is also in the running, but yep. Man, I got home from my ball game and caught the tail end of Nebraska, Minnesota, and Govs finish off Nebraska last night. They'll do a little brunch session tomorrow at 11. But man, Gophers 9-0. They were able to find ways, and Nebraska faced some pretty tough deficits and put rallies together. But man, Minnesota just was too good last night.
Yeah, it was interesting. After that first set where Nebraska lost 25-15, that honestly, I couldn't recall a time that I'd seen Nebraska volleyball look that out of sorts. And then they ended up losing the match, but kind of bounced back from there. I mean, total points, Minnesota outscored them by 7, and that includes outscoring them by 10 in the first set, which nobody does to Nebraska. So it was a strange game. I mean, Stephanie Samity is an amazing player for Minnesota, as a lot of people saw last night, if they didn't already know that. Lauren Stivers played really well. So I'm really interested in how Nebraska comes back from that, particularly with a day off in between, because while they lost to the number 5 team in the country, Nebraska entered at number 4. I think they did some good things, and I think it's the kind of game that can shake you up a little bit, but in a productive way. And we've seen that happen with past Nebraska teams. It usually isn't this early in the season, but it's also a strange season. So I'm pretty intrigued to see how Nebraska comes back.
In the post game, Coach Cook was talking about, he talked about a few things that are highly technical that I didn't quite understand because he's John Cook and that's his thing. But there were some parts that did resonate with me. And a big theme he came back to was just playing hard. And he's like, I just think this team has forgotten how hard you have to play in the Big Ten as a result of their schedule. You look at Minnesota's schedule, they've already been at Penn State. They came in 8-0. Nebraska really hadn't been tested. They'd kind of cruised. Do you think that's part of it, is just sort of the overall kind of effort and intensity?
I think so. I think there's definitely something to that. As you mentioned, going on the road to Penn State is a pretty nice advantage to have when then you have to go on the road and try and do it again at Nebraska. And like you said, Nebraska, had one weekend postponed, and just Maryland, Rutgers, Indiana. It's not the lead up to that, to the highest level of Big Ten volleyball. And I think within the games, Nebraska dug itself such big holes in really all of those matches. The fourth set wasn't quite as deep as the first 3. And that's just, I think that does kind of lend itself to that line of thinking of, hey, you got to be ready to go from first serve each time out. And beyond that, so you take out those kind of 8-2 starts and 7-3 starts. And again, there's still some good things there for Nebraska. So I think it was kind of a powerful lesson for them of like, hey, this is what it's like at the top of this conference. And that means this is what it's like at the top level of this sport in general. So now you know what it takes and just how thin those margins are. And I don't know if Nebraska had that kind of reminder coming into last night.
So, Schmidt, a quick
no, that's fine.
Here.
Go for it.
Sorry. Is Maddie Kubik involved enough? I think that was one thing that stood out to me. I'm just curious. I know you follow them a lot closer than I do, but it feels like she's not quite as featured or involved as maybe she could be.
Yeah, she could probably get a few more touches. I mean, that was the thing that stood out. I mean, if you watch the BTN broadcast, they were talking about it during it. It was just how many swings Samity had and whether Minnesota wanted her to have that many. You know, for the most part, I think being able to spread it around is obviously a good thing. But, yeah, she could probably do for some more. She really came on late in the match. You saw the second set, the one that Nebraska won. I mean, Lauren Stivrins was just on fire, and she's a little bit different. I mean, I think hitting percentage-wise was pretty similar to what Samity was, but you know, Lauren Stivrins is a middle blocker, and you're going to have less opportunities there. So they do need, you know, having that just dominant force. So your best player on the outside is just a little bit more natural seeming, I think, for how most teams play and what we're used to seeing from volleyball. So I think that's part of it. But yeah, they definitely try to spread it around, and obviously the defense is trying to oppose you as well, and that's where it gets tough because volleyball becomes really high level once you start to get into the strategy of it. And it's probably something that's tougher. I don't claim to have an understanding of being able to watch a match live and be like, oh, this is what Minnesota's trying to take away, but that might be part of it too.
Vogues, to Coach Cook and his success, his approach with the team today, you got beat, and you got beat by a good team. How will he go about corrections and being able to voice his displeasure with losing, but also get the kids to rebound where they're not? It's not like Nebraska hasn't lost. They just don't do it that often. All right. So, and they have as many big wins as the teachable moments, so to speak, with, you know, a situation where they'll lose a match to a Minnesota or a Wisconsin, but they'll always like get better as the year goes on, and they're still really, really good at, you know, 6-1 on the year. So, what's Coach Cook's magic at getting a response against a high level team after a disappointing outcome?
Yeah, I you know, you sensed some frustration during the match last night just on the sideline, and I think that was because Nebraska was making errors it doesn't make all that often. You know, it's one thing to go up against a team that is your equal and just get beat, and that happens. But, and this is just my read on it, and I started to think this when it looked like that match was not going to go to Nebraska's way. So about midway through, well, right after that third set, when they had 2 set points and didn't close it out and ended up losing, that was the moment you're like, yeah, not a lot of teams come back from that. But I almost think you're not glad to lose, and there were some frustrating parts of it, and I think it'll be a pretty rough film session at points for Nebraska. But in the past and with this one, I think you almost feel good that you're like, okay, like we know that's the level we have to be at eventually, and I'm talking about the level mentally and preparation-wise and execution-wise. So getting these matches along the way, and you're going to get a couple in the Big Ten. The league's just too strong that say, okay, we saw what happens when we don't do everything we're supposed to. And maybe we didn't have a chance to fully know exactly how high the level is, even though this is a veteran team. Each one has to sort of learn it for themselves. So I would guess that's probably the biggest takeaway. But yeah, there's going to be some stern, intense moments, I would imagine, because there were just things there Nebraska didn't do very well, particularly in that first set.
How have you did bring back so many veterans, and especially you get Lexi back and you get Stivrins back, and good bounce to their step. They're both in really good shape right now. But how about the newcomer Kayla out of Missouri? She's a different sort of middle, on the shorter side. But what do you see her adding to the team after now a handful of games that you've seen her play in?
Yeah, I think she gives them a little more offense, and that's what they've been trying to do there with kind of flipping and strategically using her and Callie Schwarzenbach, who is probably a little bit stronger on the defensive side at that second middle blocker spot. I thought Kayla played really well last night for the most part. She had a shot, I think it was in the third or the fourth set it was the fourth set, kind of kept things alive, that was just excellent. And I mean, her athleticism kind of jumps off the screen at times. So I think that's a big part of it. She reminds me, not just because she's another SEC transfer, but in terms of Brianna Holman, she just kind of provides that spark of, okay, we've gone to Maddie the last 2 times, and we went to Lexi 3 out of 4 times before that, and Lauren's out this rotation. She's somebody you can go to who can get you a kill, and I think last night was pretty important, even in the loss for her development, to be able to do that against a team like Minnesota. She made some really, really big-time plays, and I think that's kind of the biggest part. She just she has that playmaking ability that gives Nebraska another option.
Brendan Vogel's with us, weekend edition, Hail Varsity Radio, and we are talking a little Husker volleyball. So let's switch gears here, and 2 words, your best moment as a college football fan. I'll lead off, and this was a special moment because it was my first Nebraska-Oklahoma game, and while I was in the stands, there was always something really cool about Brent Musburger doing Nebraska-Oklahoma, right? After Keith Jackson was there doing that game for years as well. But it was a game that was totally cold and gray, and 32 felt like minus 32 because there was so much dampness at Memorial Stadium on the old turf. And Calvin Jones, I think, scores with 4 minutes left on a counter. And Nebraska had trailed, and they ended up coming back to win. And the 2 words that were uttered that best expressed the joy we felt on West Balcony that day as we absolutely froze our ass off, the Schmidt family, was "Hello, Miami." Hello, as Calvin Jones scores, "Hello, Miami." It's like he's Larry King taking a phone call. Cleveland, hello. But there's 1,000 bigger games, but when we flip it around from agony to joy or best moment, I got to go with "Hello, Miami," which was cool because that was the end game, man. Let's get to Miami for New Year's Day, Vogues, if you're a Nebraska fan.
Yeah, that's a good one. Musburger, he had some good ones. Obviously, I think the flea kicker call, if I recall correctly, I don't know if it boils down as nicely in 2 words as that one. Mark actually took my top 2 choices, so I'm going to go with Corey Schlesinger. Because I think if you say that, that tells you what you need to know. And just so that Orange Bowl, obviously, it's symbolic in so many ways, I think, for Nebraska football of that era, in that, well, one, you kind of finally exercise the demons after, well, the 1994 Orange Bowl, the previous Orange Bowl, and just the bowl losing streak going into that one. So there's that. There's what that play represented in terms of, well, how Nebraska played that whole time. It was, grind teams down, and in the fourth quarter, you're just going to be better. What epitomizes that more than a fullback scoring twice in the fourth quarter? It's a fullback trap, which I think says a little bit something about kind of the genius that the play calling genius that Tom Osborne was. So there's a lot that I think you can bundle into just saying those 2 words. Corey Schlesinger. fullback at Nebraska. If you know, you know.
That was so good. I mean, the Davison call, great tribute there. And then I can still hear it. Pavelka screaming Corey Schlesinger. That's awesome. That's really good. Kraynak, you got one, or are you just keeping that to yourself?
I mean, it doesn't quite have it doesn't harken back to the championship years, but Mr. Sue. Those are 2 words.
Yeah.
Which was on the Thursday night Missouri game.
You were at that.
The announcers pretty much gave up pronouncing Indomitian, and they just referred to him as Mr. Sue the entire night. And he, of course, obliterated Blaine Gabbert, crushed his soul. Incidentally, they're teammates now in the Buccaneers. I bet you that's kind of awkward. Do you think they embraced after the Super Bowl win?
No, I don't. No, he's still hiding from him. 12, 13 years later, he's still hiding from him.
I noticed Blaine grew out a beard. I think he's trying to, obfuscate
witness
his identity
protection,
or something.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Mr. Sue. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Elijah, you got one?
I don't have any memories of Husker football before 2005, so no, I don't have good memories of Husker football. I guess I could go with Sue McCoy.
Okay, there we go.
That was good. I mean, even though at the end though, I could go with the 1 second as being a painful memory.
Yeah.
That whole game is just kind of ruined by the end.
That's ruined at the end. That's fair. Vogues, some thoughts here. We kind of touched on it earlier this week, but before we let you go. With Nebraska and in-state talent kind of at a generational high, what's your take on where Nebraska sits for the next wave of kids for 2022, 2023? They did really good work in 21 and also back again when you look at that first class with some kids that are still here.
Yeah, I think everyone, it's become the topic this week. Everyone kind of sees that this probably isn't going to be one of the years where Nebraska goes 5 for 5 with the guys that they want in state. And I think the bigger story still is that we're in an era where there are five guys that are FBS scholarship guys, and not just for Nebraska, well, not just FBS, the Power 5. Seeing in Michigan, seeing in Iowa come in here and make offers early tells you that talent levels is rising. It's hard to know what to make of it, and I guess until it actually happens, even though we all feel it's going that way. But you're going to have a lead year or two, I think, just naturally, where. Yeah, it wasn't quite the right combination of factors to land some of these guys. I mean, Nebraska's 3-year trajectory based on on-field results probably doesn't help a ton. The kind of the biggest fly in the ointment for me with this is these are the guys that you can typically count on, not to be Huskers necessarily, but if you do get them. Being close to home, they're much more likely to stick around and finish their careers as Huskers. So that's the part that kind of hurts. And with just all the recruiting restrictions, nobody can go to campus on an official visit. Coaches can't go out and see players. It maybe hurts a little bit extra if Nebraska does indeed losing some of those guys, because those are the ones you think, well, we could at least get the local guys. They've probably been here at least once before, and that may not end up playing out this cycle either.
Brandon Vogel's with us. Go ahead, Kraynak.
Oh, sorry. By the way, the basketball schedule coming out. Nebraska's kind of closing schedule. It's basically, you got the game today against Purdue, and then you start kind of an every other game or every other day game situation for 4, where it's like, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Monday, something like that. I don't know. At this point, it's obvious, Nebraska's not a contender in a very difficult Big Ten. You had the the postponed interruption, the interruption of the season with COVID. What if you're Coach Hoiberg, and if you're a Nebraska fan, how do you end this? What are you looking to accomplish down the stretch here? What are you trying to find? What are you trying to establish? What are you trying to assess? Because obviously the current makeup, of course, the postponements didn't help, but there's still something kind of fundamentally flawed about this team being able to compete in this conference. What are they missing? What are they going to try to establish here down the stretch?
That's a really tough one to answer because I don't know. It's so strange. I mean, I think you're clearly seeing the impact of fatigue with this team. They tend to be in games in the first half, and they for the most part that tends to slip away as the game drags on. So being off for a month and then coming back and having this super compressed schedule would impact any team, and I think you're seeing that with Nebraska. I mean, it's not a very rosy outlook, but honestly, with the way this schedule sets up, I think, and I think Hoiberg kind of hinted at this at his most recent press conference, is kind of just be happy for the games, use the reps to get better. I think there's been enough, and I mean, Nebraska basketball has some big issues to address, of course, but I was looking at shotquality.com earlier this week, and their projected record based on just the quality of the shots that they are getting, I think was 8-11. So still, you don't want to be 8-11 a year from now, but when you're sitting here at 5-13 or whatever it is at the moment, 5-14, you can look at that and be like, okay, we're doing some good things. I actually, in the mailbag, is why that came up. I drew a parallel to football a little bit, because football, too, is doing things that should lead you to success. You're just not getting there yet. And I think it's a little bit different for basketball just due to the unique circumstances of having to take that lengthy pause and then having to try to fit a month worth of schedule into 3 weeks. So for Nebraska basketball, I think it's kind of stay the course. You hope some of these things get better. You'd like to see them finish games stronger. I think that would be a good sign that they're kind of bouncing back from having to take that break. But for the most part, it's can they get maybe one or two of these games? But even more importantly than that might be just play well for 40 minutes. That might be the ultimate takeaway for me as I watch these next few.
Vogues, have a great weekend, dude. Thanks for jumping on and talking some ball with us today. Appreciate your insight.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
Brandon
sir.
Vogel, managing editor with us, HailVarsity.com and magazine, at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. A quick timeout. The Iron Horse. Up next is Gary Sharp. It's Weekend Edition, Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Glad to have you back.
Yes, sir. You heard me right.
Here are the guys, Schmidt and Kraynak.
Well, Hector, here's the game plan. You're going to bring us 2 absolute martinis. You know how I like them, straight up. And then precisely 7 1/2 minutes after that, you're going to bring us 2 more. Then 2 more after that every 5 minutes until one of us passes out.
Excellent strategy, sir.
Working through the Weekend Edition, Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Get the podcast, download it, give us a review. iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Hail Varsity Radio. Without further ado, we welcome in the Iron Horse. It is Gary Sharp time with Hail Varsity. Sharpie, good morning, man. How you doing?
Good morning, boys. How we doing?
We're good. We are hanging out. We've thoroughly critiqued dodgeball. And it brought us back to, if you were on the winning team and you weren't the kid in gym class that got targeted, there was a smile and smirk that came across my face watching the Husker social media fun from this week. Recruiting's been a topic this week. And also, something I sent you a heads up on and Vogel touched on a moment ago. I want your take. Give me a couple of words. Describe your best moment as a college football fan in 2 words, Sharpie. What are they?
I
Gosh, I'm trying to remember the exact line.
Fifth down?
No. Geez, I blanked on it. Whatever Jim Nance's call was
with Frazier
on Tommy Frazier not being stopped by Florida in the Fiesta Bowl.
You know, how many tackles can one man break? Right.
Yep.
That was cool. Vogel said,
it's too many words, though.
Just let him have his moment, Kraynak. You hall
the
monitor.
Rules are 2 words.
You hall monitor. I said hello, Miami. Musburger and his red solo cup after Nebraska. After Nebraska and Calvin Jones beat Oklahoma 30 years ago is cool. That's one that. And Kraynak, you go back to your Missouri experience.
Yeah, Mr. Sue jumped out to me. That was a good one. That's how the announcers referred to Ndamukong, because they didn't want to try to pronounce it as he destroyed Blaine Gabbert.
So 2 more words that Nebraska fans are anxious to hear: touchdown Fidone.
That wouldn't be bad. If there's not plenty of those during his career, something went wrong. That's a phrase that should roll off the tongue. He's impressive. Back to your comment, Schmidt, about the dodgeball video. Remember the day when Nebraska football would release videos like that, and we would just watch it for enjoyment? Mm-hmm. Nowadays, it's released, and every single thing is critiqued on Mario Verduzco still wearing his backpack, to how guys look, how guys throw a dodgeball. I don't know. You know what? It's nice. It gives you a little tease. We get our spring football obsession filled with FCS football before spring football begins. We got recruiting stuff going on. It's never ending. At least it's kind of quieted down around Nebraska football. We haven't had the drama of the first month.
Well, and Nebraska wins the offseason every year. You see a lot of chatter about that on Twitter too. Where
you know what though? Someone asked me on my show earlier this week, and I may have brought it up. I think Nebraska should be really boring this offseason. Not intentionally, but what are the storylines? I mean, you can only beat to death how they haven't reached expectations in 3 years, and you're not going to be able to sell somebody, well, we got hope. No, I mean, you're not going to be able to do that. Nebraska should just be downright boring this offseason. There's probably not going to be a lot of national chatter. In the magazines, they're going to be 4th or 5th in the West, and that might be the perfect thing for this program.
That's a good point. Yeah, because it hasn't worked well when expectations have been there, so we might as well change that.
Well, and I will tell you this. So players and coaches alike, they understand that when they say something these days, people roll their eyes, and I think they've gotten to the point, and it's also internally of we can't really say much until we do it on the field because that's where we're judged, and we're okay with it. And I think we should all be okay with it, but it's football. We love the program. We love covering the program. We'll eat up any morsel of information. And by the time we get to that game in Champaign in August, I mean, you'll be through the roof, and you'll be so drunk on Kool-Aid you won't remember what time kickoff is.
I wish I was drunk on some Harp or some Guinness.
No, I know, and that's the thing.
Out in Dublin. But
Sharpie, are you going to be able to help Kraynak through this disappointment? Well, we've already got plans to get to Champaign, so we'll be there for week 0. But it's not Dublin. And Kraynak, brother, I know how well, A, how much you love Ireland, but B, Sharpie, he needs a hug, man, and you're closer to him than I am right now.
Well, I will tell you this. Nebraska is going to go to Dublin, Ireland. They will make a way to get there. It's just they're going to have to find an opponent that is a road opponent that is willing to take a big paycheck to take a Nebraska visit out of their community and move it to Dublin. But there is general interest in Nebraska's part in playing over there sooner than later. So, just hold off for maybe a year, 2, 3 years, and they'll go over there and play. You know what? One thing about that, and this was kind of, we all anticipated, we've all been talking about this for a while, if the game is going to move back to the mainland. I like the fact they kept it on week 0. Mm-hmm. Because I think if you move it to week 1, there's some really good Big Ten conference-on-conference crime games that you would get lost. Now you share or you take the spotlight, because there's only one other Power 5 game on that weekend, on week 0, and that's Hawaii and UCLA. There's already enough storylines being built in for Brett Bielema's debut on campus, what Scott Frost has to do in year 4. I like it that it's a standalone. It's a great opportunity for Nebraska to grab a lot of attention and play on a stage where, oh, by the way, that probably becomes the biggest game that Scott Frost has coached in Nebraska.
Well, and at least we know, too, that nobody's going to be able to say, oh, Nebraska, the only team to lose on 2 continents. Like, we know that's not happening this year. Which is
wow.
Which is it's true. That would happen. And now that's not going to happen. It's the silver lining.
I only know Nebraska is a team that won against Kansas State and Japan.
Thank you.
See? Oh, that's true.
That's
Very few teams have won on
Coca-Cola Bowl.
Yeah.
Sharpie, you've got to have a Devaney story with that, don't you?
Well, okay, so the Monday after. Well, see, we can't tell the fight between the Road Warriors and a couple of the black shirts back then.
This was a hotel, wasn't it? Was this Perella?
It was in an elevator. It was in an elevator early in the morning, and all heck broke loose. But the day after, so Nebraska played, and they stayed over an extra day because they were going to tour the city. Devaney was going up to players and saying, if you guys don't want to go and tour the city, we'll just go and we'll sit and drink all day. To the bathhouse we go.
I was going to say, I mean, what kind of tour are we taking?
So I don't know if any players took him up on the offer, but Bob Devaney consumed let's say he just soaked in all of Tokyo.
Soaked in all of Tokyo. That's good.
Gary, let's switch to baseball.
No, come on, let's keep talking soaking in Tokyo.
Should we just keep talking Bob Devaney stories? Like Bob Devaney, who, as the athletic director one time, a young Gary Sharp, Bob Devaney got lost in South Stadium. He couldn't find where his office was.
Oh, my goodness.
Did this have to do with soaking up Lincoln?
I escorted him back.
Was the Tam O'Shanter involved?
Yeah, well, hey, you know who has stories is his drivers. But he also used to, John Sanders was his guy.
Yes.
And he would show up. It didn't matter. The coach didn't know what time the game started for baseball. I mean, it was really, even as an athletic director, who cares? He once asked Cal Bentz. That's how he hired Cal Bentz as a swimming coach at Nebraska. He asked him, have you ever had anybody drown? Cal Bentz said no, and he goes, you're hired. But Devaney would show up at the baseball games, and his driver, would pull right up there to where Buck Belcher was, the entrance, and Devaney would slowly get out of the car, and he would shuffle his way into the ballpark. And Buck Belcher had that gate right behind home plate that you could walk onto the field. Well, Devaney really didn't care or didn't realize or didn't see that the game was actually going on. And Devaney, a couple of times in the middle of games, would open up the gate to walk on the field while the game was going on.
Oh, no.
And John Sanders would have to call timeout, and he would go over, and then he would escort Coach to the dugout. He got Devaney, who was getting a little bit older. He shuffled. Well, then Devaney would sit in the corner of the dugout and just dog cuss the home plate umpire. And you could hear him. You could hear him if you were standing behind the backstop.
And that was when Nebraska was on the rise in quite a few sports. I mean, is Bill Moose drinking enough right now? Do we have to send him a bottle?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know that we'll ever have an athletic director that'll be visited by Barry Switzer on set delivering tacos. Or remember, here's the thing about Devaney is, and I wish I caught him at the tail end when Coach wasn't in great shape. Bob Devaney, as an athletic director, had a gambling show on television. He would pick games against the spread.
He had 2 coaches shows, didn't he? He had one with he had 10-11, and he had the 10-11 show with the taco moment, right?
Yep. And then he had like a KTV show, I believe, but it didn't have his name in it at all. It was like the Nebraska football show. Mm-hmm. But Devaney was on there, and he would pick games against the spread.
Oh, jeez. Things have gotten so buttoned up since then. Can we talk baseball now? I mean, I want to get into a few things. The schedule came out. I missed this, by the way. I'm sure there's been an announcement. Are there fans in the stands, or is it a local decision? Just real quick.
Right now, it's in the hands of the Big Ten, and the Big Ten has made no ruling. They would like no fans. Nebraska is pushing, along with other teams in the Big Ten, to have some semblance of fans where they can get local approval and they can put it in the hands of local officials, because Nebraska and other teams in the Big Ten are trying to position themselves for the fall where they can make decisions on their own and not the Big Ten dictating how many people are in their stands. I think Nebraska baseball will have, maybe not initially, but towards the end, a semblance of fans. I would be very disappointed on that Memorial Day weekend when they play Michigan if you don't have, at least 10, 20% capacity at Haymarket Park.
Yeah, okay, and that's how Nebraska is going to close the regular season, is against Michigan. But schedule comes out, and if you haven't looked at it yet, it's primarily Nebraska's just playing on the weekends. In most cases, a 3-game series, but in some cases, it's like a pool play type thing where you'll play 4 games, 2 against one opponent, 2 against another. So it's an interesting way of going about the schedule, and especially early, it gets interesting with Iowa. Because you get them you get them twice in Minneapolis, and then you follow that up that very next weekend with a 3-game series in Iowa City. And Iowa, and according to some polls, are picked ahead of Nebraska this year. But you're kind of front-loaded on your schedule. You're getting some contenders early. What do you think is the best-case scenario for Nebraska? Are you trying for 500? Is that realistic? Over the first maybe 10 or so games, probably through the Maryland series, or I don't know. How well do you think Nebraska will fare up until you hit Penn State, which is kind of bottom of the barrel in the Big Ten?
Well, I think Nebraska feels like they're in a good position. They're ready to play. They've got their first 3 starters are all locked in. The 4th one will be kind of a mixture of arms. I think they like where they're at, where they're going to be able to get off to a good start. I think to get in the NCAA tournament out of this league, you're going to need to be probably, 10 games above 500. Let's say there's 44 scheduled. Let's be realistic. Maybe you'll lose 4, 6 games possibly. I think you got to be 10 games above 500 to get into the NCAA tournament, because I don't know what the committee will do looking at the Big Ten, not knowing how good Michigan is, how good Indiana is, how good Ohio State is. But if you're Nebraska, you're really not on the radar to begin the year. I think if you're 10 games above 500 and you beat those teams that I just mentioned, you win series against them, then I think Nebraska's in a good spot for the NCAA tournament. Here's the thing why it's a conference-only schedule. I got this straight from the horse's mouth. The Big Ten treats baseball just like they would treat field hockey, badminton, highlight, whatever sport is being offered in the Big Ten, they're treating it exactly the same. That's why there was no exception for scheduling in the Big Ten. They went straight across the board. They didn't think otherwise. That's why it's a conference-only schedule.
Man. Sharpie, a thought here before we wrap up. A couple of big announcements for a top 5 today with some Metro talent when it comes to the 2022 crew. And I'm interested to kind of get your feel and vibe with Woods and Jackson, with not only their view on Nebraska, in your opinion, but also the other 3 kids, the Bellevue West products with Helms and Riley Ducker and Houseman, of course, from Columbus. Now, we touched on it last week. I want your take this week with Nebraska and, where's the door at right now with Nebraska and these in-state kids for 2022? Is the door shut? Is it cracked? Is it locked? How do you kind of view it as we're still a ways away from December?
So prepare yourself. I don't think either Devin Jackson or Deshaun Woods today will have Nebraska in the top 5. I don't think that means Nebraska is completely done. But what is Nebraska selling? Nebraska to Omaha kids are selling, hey, we were good once again. Help us run it back, essentially. That message is not going over very well in Omaha. And then when you don't have results on the field, it's a tough sell, especially for players who got really, really good offers that are above your offer, and they didn't grow up with a dream of playing in Lincoln. Nebraska could go, guys, 0 for 5 of the top 5 players. I think they'll probably get 2 of them, but brace yourself. They could go 0 for 5 with the top 5 players in the state this upcoming year. And Nebraska has to win on the field for that to change. I also think they have to change their pitch, and I think it would also help if they had somebody, along with Barrett Ruud and Scott Frost, recruiting Omaha. I think they need some fresh blood also in state that is not, hey, he played here at Nebraska. My mom and dad remember rooting for him. They need the big hitters to come out in state. I think in-state kids would like to be treated like out-of-state kids are when it comes to recruiting. Nebraska's done a better job of identifying early, if you already look at what they're doing for 23, but can they close? That's another thing. Is Scott Frost a closer, out-of-state, in-state? But I don't think those 2 today will announce the Nebraska's in their top 5. Not over. Nebraska will continue to recruit them. Remember, Nick Henrich and Chris Hickman, they were a little bit iffy on Nebraska. They both had ended up in Lincoln. But it'll be very interesting to watch the class of 2022 in-state, how it develops and what they think of Nebraska and what effect that has down the road if Nebraska still can't rack up victories to sell over, hey, we're selling tradition and history.
What, real quick, where could Nebraska turn for that reinforcement in state? Is there somebody on staff? Do they hire somebody that's more contemporary? And I'm not saying Barrett's old. He's not. But, I mean, is there somebody that's maybe a little bit less removed from the program that the kids may recognize?
So Barrett is good, but Barrett is still young in his development. I'll tell you the 2 guys that would hit home, Travis Fisher and Tony Tuioti. And Tuioti is twofold. He's an excellent recruiter, and remember, he also has a son that has a Nebraska offer. So he can, play both sides of the fence. I think they need to change their approach in Omaha and their selling point of, instead of, hey, we had success in the past, we feel like you can be part of it, they've got to go with something else because that message is not resonating as well as they thought it would with Omaha kids.
Well, we'll see where Nebraska makes their adjustment and see how things look after today. Gary Sharp, the Iron Horse. Sharp, you have a great weekend, man. Thanks again for jumping in with us today.
Oh, thank you, boys.
Let's soak up Tokyo, right?
We went all over the place. This was the biggest kind of potpourri show that we've had in a while.
Why not? Well, Kraynak, I'm going to be in Arizona, so you rock it next week, okay?
Sweet. It'll be all Devaney stories.
Beautiful. All right, have a good weekend.